I am the area planner for the Kenai Peninsula and everything south of Girdwood for the State Department of Transportation and Public Facilities. My title is area planner. And one of the things I do is try and find money for projects that communities care about. I do a lot of other things, but that's one of the things I do, and probably the way I interact most with the city of Homer.
So the primary focus of this meeting, go ahead, Charlie.
Jocelyn, I should give you a little background. I just retired from Kenai engineering. So I look at this project as from an engineering, and I do GIS too in my career. So from both those angles. So as a board member for HTA, really kind of along with Billy, we've really been that mapping analytical focus for the project. So just to give you some insight there.
Good.
And I did
The more
just see
local
Marcus Mueller right in.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the more local talent we can bring to this, the cheaper it's going to end up being, and the more bang you're going to get for your money. So having, a skilled and educated board with a lot of expertise just makes the federal dollar go further.
Right.
Homer is lucky in that sense.
You got it.
We are, and our board in particular, and this project in particular, is fortunate in that so many people with required skills to pull it off are genuinely interested in volunteering their time. We're being advised by local engineers and registered surveyors on design specifications and whatnot. And like I said, we have some experience and expertise in the fields. We've worked in the field on these projects and gone through the design process in the past. So we've got some competent people from GIS mapping to engineering and peatlands analysis on board to help us out. So I think we have a very talented group of individuals here. And as we know, the primary focus of this meeting, Marcus, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Marcus Mueller. I'm the Land Management Officer for Kenai Peninsula Borough. And so part of this project includes borough lands. And also, I've been working with the borough mayor's office, and the borough assembly is going to be considering a resolution of support for the project.
So the primary reason for this meeting today is to discuss and hopefully answer questions about how we can go about making this multi-plate tunnel construction happen. We know it's late in the game, but we also are confident that we will be able to do it. Have been in dialogue with Rich Pribble of Dow Engineers since at least October, focusing on the tunnel, the multi-plate issue since early November, and have been assuming that those discussions would lead to it being incorporated into the highway design for the project milepost 157 to 169. We understand now that wasn't able to happen, but as you told me this morning, there are other avenues that we may be able to approach this, and so that we can get all these folks up to speed. Jocelyn, could you tell me a little bit about? Could you discuss with the group a little bit about what we talked about this morning?
Sure. I'm the speaker for this, but since I don't know, last week, we've been scrambling all over the building, talking to different engineers, different project managers, different management level people of what's legal and when is the money going to go stale and are we allowed to spend money on this and how do we move this forward and make this happen. So this is sort of what you're hearing today is the result of all of that scrambling around and consensus. Right now, the Baycrest Hill project that Kelly Summers is the project engineer on. This is HSIP money, which is specifically safety money that's been in the works for a long, long time. And this money has to be spent now or it goes away. This project is designed and ready to go out to bid. So it's here now. It's going to go forward as planned. The bike under overpass culvert concept was not part of the original environmental document and is not part of the project and is not eligible for that money. However, that's one source of funding. It is going to make shoulders on both sides, which will be useful and keep people from being out of the runway. But in reviewing your TAP nomination, you have a strong project. That money would be available in 2024. And that has enough time for design and environmental document. And we will need an analysis because drainage is always an issue in Homer. And every time you do something, whether or not you intend it to be for drainage, it changes the drainage, and that needs to be given sufficient time, analysis, and mitigation if necessary when it's being worked on. And it's also time to get legislative authority to spend this money, which we do not currently have. This bike culvert leads to a trailhead on both sides, which gives it extra points according to the TAP criteria. It makes it very strong, quite a bit stronger than some of the other borough endorsed trail projects that I have seen. So it's going to score pretty well. And because of this HSIP project being so recent, we're going to have pretty accurate cost estimates, which is also going to allow the project to come in on a higher level because we're not going to have to blue sky it so much. Other communities that have trail projects that don't have any nearby comps recently using federal process are not going to have as accurate of estimates. So there's some things I would want to work on with whoever your the head of your writing section is, to include or find another funder rather than DOT, like the bathrooms. We're not in the bathroom business and there's no way I can sell that, but there are other sources to pay for those bathrooms that are not DOT. And I would recommend those being called out. So the things that we can fund, we should, and we should really kind of shine a light on that and be real bold in the nomination form. And the stuff that we can't fund, we should say, we know we can't fund these, we still want them, but here's a source through DNR, here's a source through HUD, here's a source that, CDC is promoting that would cover those costs. Again, it's always a problem finding maintenance funds, because usually you can find grant funds to build something once, but then somebody's got to own and maintain it. In the past, the city of Homer has been really loath to do that. DOT is not in that business anymore. So that's kind of a sticking point, that if you want to include it, you're really going to have to be thoughtful about how you want to talk about solving that maintenance bugaboo. The trail part of it, and the trailhead part of it, and the multi-plate connection is all fundable through the TAP program. And I checked every element. So that's the good news, and the bad news is you have a strong project and most of it is eligible.
Jocelyn, I got a question from an engineering kind of standpoint. So one of the reasons we've been pushing hard on this bike culvert now is to take advantage of economies of scale, right? Because you get that milepost 157 and 169 project, $115 million project, with numerous bridges, right? And so it just made sense here that this bike culvert, since you're going to be doing all that massive digging on those other bridges, why not take advantage of the equipment and the economies of scale of that project to build this culvert? Because otherwise you're going to have to come back in and dig another massive hole to replace this culvert. So I guess, it's encouraging you guys like the TAP grant, but I guess I'm a little concerned because, to dig that hole again, it's gonna jack the price from, say, 150,000 for the enlarged bike culvert to God knows what, million plus, So I'm curious if you guys, you and Kevin and Rich and Kelly have talked about that.
We have, and when we put in the drainage analysis and the environmental document that will be necessary, and whatever final design ends up happening, it is cheaper to build it with TAP money than it is to postpone this project.
But I don't mean to belabor this, but that means, say, in 2024, 2020, digging another hole, ripping up the highway again, and putting in the culvert. It just makes no sense to me.
Possibly.
You're digging it up now.
I understand, but if we don't let this thing go to bid, $11 million in highway safety improvement funds will lapse. So in terms of an economy of scale, that's a big bite. It's actually cheaper to and more cost effective to have this process through as a TAP than try to slow or stop this project and eat that $11 million.
But I get that. But can you let it go to bid and then do a change order? We've done that multiple times.
We've talked about that because it's not in the document. That would be difficult, and because we don't have the analysis. So how we left it was that nothing we design or build should preclude this project from happening in 25. So don't put any utilities there. Don't do anything that's gonna in any way interfere with this eventually getting built. And that's kind of how we left it. So I don't know if that leaves the door open to subsequent change orders or not, but it means that whoever gets the bid knows that this is coming soon.
Which is good, I don't want to complain. You're being very, very.
No, I'm telling you what I would, what I
Well,
have
I've
received.
done a number of, I know what you're saying. It just kills them. They're gonna have to dig that hole all over.
But is there any chance that this could be done I mean, I know that, that multi-plate tunnel isn't gonna happen tomorrow. Is there any chance that maybe?
Maybe what?
That we can get this worked out so that we don't have to build it twice?
Doesn't sound like it.
From what I understand, the HSIP project is going forward as designed. It will bid and go forward as designed. What is possible is if you guys get TAP funding is to fulfill this project, and the multi-plate tunnel is part of the whole trails project. That's what's possible in terms of environmental clearances and the drainage analysis, the design, and the legislative authority.
Do we, Jocelyn, this is Debbie, do we have to have some idea of the environmental design or the drainage things when we submit the TAP grant, or is there money that we can build into the TAP grant for those considerations?
You would call out that we're gonna need a this and we're gonna need a that, and that's gonna be, $40,000 at least. Yes.
Yeah.
You would
Okay.
call it out and you would attach a cost to it.
Okay, so it's, that all come in as part of the TAP. thing.
Right. And you gotta use a federal process, which makes everything much, much more expensive.
Okay,
It does. There's no value added. There's really not. It's the
Okay.
same engineering. It's the same smart people looking at it and saying, this is how it's going to impact and you guys should, use this fill. And it's the same people. It's the same task. It just costs more.
okay. That's really helpful.
That's not news.
And yeah, so what I'm hearing though is that you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna put a culvert in there, and then we can come back in and put a new culvert in. Because that's the most cost-effective way to do it at this point.
I'm not
for your grant.
entirely sure that is exactly where the culvert's gonna go. That's an engineering project management question. I believe so. But yes, it is gonna be a culvert for water as designed today. What
Okay,
you guys are talking about has a completely different form and function and maybe made out of different materials.
so it
I
might
don't
not
know.
even be in that location with the creek. It might be in a separate location.
Correct.
Okay,
Depending on
Alright.
what they need it to do for hydrology. And that gets analyzed through our hydrologist. It's not anadromous, so there are different considerations. I make everybody upsize on the Lower Peninsula to the legal maximum of what they're allowed to get federal reimbursements on, because we just have all these extreme water events all the time. So we try not to replace these every time we turn around. So I think it's prudent to upsize. So we will build the biggest culvert that the feds will reimburse us for. And its
Okay.
primary purpose will be keeping water off the road.
okay,
So if you have a culvert plan where the primary purpose is providing access for people year round, then that's a whole different thing. And that may need to be somewhere else.
okay.
That
great.
fits in with where you guys want it to hook up.
So, but we don't have to specify that at this point. We have,
Correct,
because we don't have all the data to do that.
correct.
We'll be somewhere near where the trails are.
Yeah, and you will say, a safe crossing for bicycles and pedestrians. And
Okay.
if you have a concept drawing, you'll submit that.
Okay, very good. That's very helpful.
So that and the bathrooms are my biggest concern.
Okay. Okay, so no bathroom.
Well, they're
and-
just, you can put it in the concept, but just be sure that this is not part of the grant. Because everybody in headquarters is allergic to that.
Okay,
Not just at headquarters, running the same thing here in the city.
It's a very hard sell. It's expensive and it's necessary, and nobody wants to be in charge of those or has budget for those.
That's understandable. And just to clarify, and I realized in reviewing our submittal with attachment A and attachment B today that we didn't really address this, and that is we're looking to the city to finance and maintain the trailheads and trails that are on city property as part of the matching funds requirement.
No, if they're on state property, and I assume DNR
Yeah, I definitely would like to have her on board.
or
No, what I'm saying is they're not all on city property. What I'm saying is the bathrooms we're proposing so far are on the city property, on the city-owned property. And so we've been in discussions with the city about using the matching funds to build the bathrooms, the parking lots, the trailheads, and the trails on city property as part of the matching funds.
that's beautiful. That would be fine. That would be great.
So there will be no bathrooms built on DNR property or borough property or otherwise unless we work that out at the time. For instance, at the DOT.
Right, but if it's in the concept and you put your match funds next to your federal funds, they all become federal funds under the federal rules. So there will have to be some kind of agreement written up that says the city of Homer or this users group or some other entity is adopting this bathroom and establishing a way to maintain it.
Okay.
And there's a lot of different choices. I mean, you guys are on the grid down there. So you could have a swipe your card bathroom. That's feasible because you have power. It's not feasible in some other locations where we have bathrooms, but in that location it is. So there's different options that you could look at in terms of user fees. You can also, what I've seen in other locations to pay for bathroom services for festivals and seasonal stuff like 4 months a year is I've seen, it's not a license, but it's kind of like a local permit for a food truck or a business to be parked there. And part of that fee goes to paying for the bathroom and sanitation services. So there's different ways to deal with it depending on the local user groups and municipalities and what they, how they want it to function. But that would be something that would have to be worked out. It's not something DOT will take on.
Well, that's right, because Tom came to this one too. I'm stuck in the middle. I think I was reading through the
Marcus is smiling. He's heard this spiel before.
It's great information, Jocelyn.
Yeah, but it's not news.
exactly.
Well, I like how clear you are. This is awesome.
Very good, very good.
Sorry,
So
this is what
I
you
have a
get.
question about the match. So, just to clarify, the bathrooms can be matched, but they have to have a very specific written out memorandum of agreement or some kind of a letter of commitment.
Yeah, I
that
think Tom was saying 75% and everything.
At this point, you need to say that these are not going to be on DOT right of way and they are going to be owned and maintained by an entity other than DOT. You don't have to say who that entity is, but you have to claim it assertively, and then it's okay to be part of the project. It's just we don't want to pay for it or be in the business.
Gotta be
Because
clear, okay.
for us, it's a slippery slope for all the other projects.
Right, right.
And it's a
The
big
other thing I
problem.
wanted- The other thing that I wanted to point out, I'm not that familiar with the TAPS process, but we were assuming that we would use the matching funds to build the trails on a city property.
The project is the total project, and you guys define what that is. I tell people to prioritize if what's really important to you are the trailheads or the ADA accessibility or the underpass, whatever it is that's really important to you, put that first. And then the secondary parts of the project that are important to you, put that next. Because then if you have to downscope at some point, if in 2 years inflation is at 15% and your original match is just not there for the actual cost of the project, then at least you have a validated scope that's gone through a public process that you can have confidence in of this makes sense to do first.
I like that idea. I definitely think we
So
should
the whole project is the whole project, but we can apply
that we've got, we're
the portion that the city would be supporting as match,
You're gonna go out for, a proposal.
but we have to have enough money to do the whole thing.
Definitely have-
Does that make
So just to
sense?
clarify, we can't guarantee that the city money will be used on city property.
You can write it that way. I don't know why you paint yourself in a
Well,
corner
it's
like
also,
that.
So we got,
Because we were selling it to the city of Homer as those funds would be used on city property.
Okay, you can do that.
whatever.
You can write it that way if you want to. It's such a benefit. I wouldn't do that if I could get away with it, because at some point they may decide to donate right of way, They may decide they can, you know, do the legwork to certify right of way, and that's 10 hours that we don't have to charge to. So if there's any slush, then that's where your priorities come in, where, oh, and we also want this signage, or we also want these benches, or we also want this other thing that was in the scope but wasn't quite budgeted, and it could be spent on that. So that's kind of up to you. And how you want to do it.
So you might want to make that a discussion between you and Dan, but on paper, keep it broad.
Yeah.
So that would be where we want to like try to find some dedicated.
And you can also, because these are very early stages, you can also say conceptually, the city has agreed to match this amount for this scope. And then we work out the details when we do the award. And at that point, we know a whole lot more because we have an estimate of what it would cost to do federally. Because right now it's kind of wags.
Yeah. So I have a pretty good idea based on conversations with our engineer about the cost of upsizing the pipe, the existing pipe design to one that would accommodate pedestrian traffic. I have no idea whatsoever what a pedestrian friendly culvert is going to cost. Is that something we need to look into on our end?
No, you need to describe how you want it to function. You want it to provide safe passage, as I understand, across the road, separated by mode of travel, right? So you don't want bikes and cars next to each other, and you want it to be two-way, if I understand it correctly, and you want it to be all weather, if I understand you correctly, and you want it to be pedestrian and bike, if I understand it correctly. I don't think you're going to want to do ADA compliant, just because the grade there may be such that you're going to need so much more space on the side. I don't know. That's an engineering question and a concept question. You guys got to think about how you want to address that. You could do the best that you can with what you got, but if you specifically call it out ADA compliant, then we're going to want you to deliver that. And that can get very, very pricey because you can't go above that 5% grade. And depending on the location, you need a lot longer lead time to get to those angles. So, and again, that you may say ADA compliant where feasible or where possible, leave that door open, because you're not going to know that until you get more into the engineering of where you're going to locate it.
That portion of our proposal was not expected to be ADA compliant. We do have a couple of areas that we have mapped and done some topography work and are planning to make ADA compliant.
Right, and you can just mention that.
Yeah.
So is it okay to use the verbiage for our trails ADA accessible?
Yes,
As opposed to
yes, yes.
Well, that's where I had.
And it's also the case that if you want to say any remaining funds will be used for, because what happens is sometimes we have $800 left or some ridiculous amount of money that we can't build anything with, but boy, you could buy some bike lockers. So if you want to say any remaining money is going to go in a solar panel, or any remaining money is going to go in a battery charger, or it's going to go in signage, or it's going to go in a bike locker, or it's going to go in a handicap parking sign, or whatever you want to do with it. But if you put that in there, then that leaves you the grace to actually use any of that money. Because we have lots of little dribs and drabs after the fact where you're thinking, what am I going to do with $800 in a construction project? I always tell people to program every dollar they get because they probably have something useful for it.
Does anybody else have anything for Joselyn while we've got her here?
Yeah, another question, Joselyn. I'm still thinking about this expensive bike culvert. So how specific do we need to be with regard, so there's 5 million. How specific do we need to be about breaking out where those dollars go? I guess I'm not clear on that.
Okay,
Because if this culvert's part of it, I can tell you, it's probably gonna be $1 million culvert at least.
yes,
If they do it.
yes.
So I'm just curious, so what's your direction on? how we write?
Be as specific in the scoping as you can be. Get it to me as soon as you can. I then give it to my engineers here, who will give you a DOT approved federal estimate of what it will cost for DOT to deliver that project. That's why you don't need to tell me how you want to do it. You tell me what you want to do.
So we have applied for the TAPS grant because we have felt like our project is most suited to the requirements of the TAPS grant versus the CAPS grant. Or I'm sorry, CTP.
Yeah, this is not CTP eligible. This is all absolutely perfectly dovetails into the TAP criteria.
I just wanted to confirm that now that we're getting into pedestrian crossings underneath the highway, that we're not getting into the CTP realm.
No.
Okay. Okay.
And once you've got this, it seems like a lot of work for a grant nomination, and it is competitive. But once you've got this then it starts to work for you, because there are all kinds of other both federal and state opportunities to repackage and resubmit this. Because you will have an accurate estimate for using federal process. You will have widely vetted scope that has public process and a lot of planning behind it. So you're sort of in a better position to get all different sources of funding, whether that's through the city, through your state legislature, through the earmark process. All of those things then open the door, as well as IJA.
What is IJA?
Infrastructure Jobs Act. It's all the big infrastructure money where they have lots and lots about funded not through transportation even, but funded through CDC and HUD for healthy communities, for more active communities. And that's money that can be spent on trails, park and ride, bike storage, crossings, those kind of things. But once you have this TAP package, you can use that grant application in a variety of ways. Jenny Carroll is somebody we've been working on a lot on all different kinds of grants. And this is something that, as a packet that the city can use to apply for all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything like anything planned.
Well, the next item on the agenda for us to discuss is about our matching funds requirements. Unless someone has something more for Joselyn, I hate to keep it for that unless you would like to participate or have any suggestions.
I just want to know who's the person who's going to be sending me stuff.
I am.
Sandy.
Okay, so Sandy, I'll be corresponding directly with you.
Yeah.
Okay. So the nomination is due February 28th. But if you have placeholders there, that's okay. It's not due to headquarters until like April 3rd. So I have a lot of communities who are working up to the last minute, who don't have paid staff or necessarily a very sophisticated base, and they need every minute. So if you know you're going to get a resolution of support, but you don't have one yet, put a placeholder page in saying pending and sort of give me a window of when that's happening. Or if you have letters of non-objections or letter of support from adjacent landowners or anything you have that you need more time to get, put it there. So turn in as complete a thing as you can, as soon as you can, like the scope. If we have a good scope, we can start working on estimates.
Okay.
And that's something that we need to provide you.
So we're not like.
But it takes our guys probably 2 weeks at least to put it together. Because there's a lot of unknowns about, do we have utilities there? And I don't know, and
It was something
you
about
know,
him doing-
how are we designing this and what's up? They've changed the standards and what's up to code and all of that. And then because it's Homer, we got to have our hydrologist go over it with a fine tooth comb because we don't want to mess anything up. You know, this is our fix it area. This is not our mess stuff up area.
No, right.
So it'll take a lot of scrutiny.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Very
So I look forward to seeing and hearing from you in the next 6 weeks pretty intensely. Okay.
I mean, I'm hoping it's fine,
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn.
And
Very
get in
helpful.
touch
Thank
if
you
you
very
need
much.
something.
but
Hmm?
I'm partial, right? I'm biased.
Very, very helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good. Thank you then.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jocelyn.